what we're going to talk about tonight is our experience at TrueNorth Health Center as recently as early last month. First of all, I'll fill you in a little bit on what we've been up to since our last live stream, because it's been more than just over 2 months since we did one in mid-September. We went to the International Plant-Based Nutrition Conference in Anaheim, California, and that was, as usual, it was exciting. It was inspiring, stimulating, and we then, at the end of the conference, we went straight to TrueNorth Health Center, and we checked in for 11 nights. And I'd been there before. I'd been there about 7 years ago with my mum. And Malcolm had been there just as a day visitor. We've met Alan Goldhammer several times there and had lunch, but he'd never stayed there. And I was very keen to get in there to try a fast. And I can see questions about, do you think we benefited from the fasting? So we'll certainly get to all of that. And and the other thing is, since we got back from TrueNorth, we ran a retreat with our former immersion partner, Anita Ricky, from Digger's Veggie Kitchen down in Anglesea, and we ran a retreat at Queenscliff, which was an absolute delight. We had, I think, 12 people, and had a lot of fun. And then after that, we've just wrapped up our 4-part webinar series that we do about 3-4 times a year. And so we've been a bit busy, and so this is really our first clear week to think about, let's do a live stream. And lovely to see you all telling us where you're from at the moment. It's great. I might let you begin with talking about the fasting experience.
Well, today's conversation is about our water fasting experience at TrueNorth and a little bit of all things fasting. We booked 11 nights at TrueNorth to give us time to have a 5 to 7 day fast, and then half as much time again for the refeeding process. TrueNorth specialises in water-only fasting, but there are many other fasting methods. For example, restricted time feeding seems to have become very popular, and that's when people narrow the feeding window in each 24-hour period, so they have a longer fasting period every 24 hours. It was interesting. I was listening to Walter Longo being interviewed by I Am Human podcast, which is one of the podcasts I'd recommend. And he was only suggesting a 12 or 13-hour overnight fast, which was interesting because someone else told me the other day that Alan Goldhammer, TrueNorth, recommends a much longer overnight fast. But when you're staying at TrueNorth, the meals are at 8, 12 and 5 p.m. So potentially if you finished your evening meal by 6 p.m., there'd be potentially a 14-hour fast there. However, it's a little bit concerning that there was recently a study or observational study finding a higher cardiac mortality in people who were restricting their eating hours to only 8 hours a day. Now, who was doing that and why were they doing that? And there may well have been some confounding factors in that. But it sort of raises that issue that we should always sort of look and see whether things have a downside. Our comments, I don't know. When we're eating low calorie density, whole foods, plant-based, tons of vegetables, fruits, cooked low calorie, intact whole grains, legumes, we wouldn't be able to fit that into just a few hours a day. We wouldn't be able to, get anywhere near our calorie needs. I think the bottom line, my suggestion about the restricted time feeding is, yes, it's a good idea to have an overnight fast, and it's a good idea to go to bed not have a full stomach when you go to bed. But we would usually say eat breakfast, skip supper, because I think there is quite a lot of evidence that skipping breakfast and eating a lot in the evenings are not good for our metabolism. Then there's intermittent fasting, like, for example, the 5-2 diet or 5 days a month. And, there have been shown to be benefits of that, but mainly benefits for people who are on a calorie-dense, non-whole foods, plant-based standard diet, mainly through a lot of weight loss. And anything that makes you lose weight if you're overweight and eating not super healthy food is going to help. We sort of think it would be preferable to maintain a healthy weight through the sort of food you eat every day rather than having to do those periods of fasting to manage weight. However, it may be a useful strategy for people who are starting whole foods plant-based, have a lot of weight to lose. And Corbett Esselstyn actually advocates it for some of his heart patients. It's pretty urgent that they get rid of all that, fat around the middle. So he has people do the R5-2 to help with that. But the water-only fasting, it's not for everyone. So our journey to True North started with a phone call. So I'm just messing around with my screen here. Look, Jenny, it's gone a bit funny here. Just adjusting some notes here so I can actually read them. It's a minor technical challenge. Here we are. That's right. Yeah, so our journey to True North started back in February with a phone call after we, put in our application to go there. A phone call from Alan Goldhammer himself, who promised that he would take away everything I enjoyed, just to sort of check that we're going there for the right reasons and that there are no obvious medical reasons why we shouldn't go and fast. And when we arrived, there was a much more detailed medical history taken, and we were expected to have blood tests when we got there, or in our case, before we left Australia, so that to make sure there were no contraindications to fasting. There are many medical reasons, on who should not do a water-only fast. Like you've got type 1 diabetes, you're on many types of medications that are not compatible with fasting. And if you have impaired kidney function, it's not compatible with fasting. But these people can go to True North and they can just eat from the delicious SOS-free buffet every day.
Salt, oil, sugar-free.
SOS-free, yeah, salt, yeah. So for people who have, some contraindication to fasting, or someone who's wanting to do some fasting but they're on their own, it's a fasting because it's important. There are side effects and adverse effects from water-only fasting, and True North has actually published a series of 20,000 patients, and there were frequent adverse effects. Person felt dizzy, person had headache, etc., and some moderately severe ones. Person had to have some intravenous fluid. But fortunately, no deaths. And after we'd finished fasting, it was 20,002 and still no deaths. So a safer option for, fasting at home beyond, water fasting or fasting beyond a couple of days would be to do a fasting mimicking diet. And that's when you actually eat a few hundred calories per day. Think, Walter Longo's organization, which gives its profits to charity. I'll give them that. They're Prolon bars, where you have these special bars that have a small amount of protein and they're about the same amount of carbohydrates and fats. But it is processed food. If I was recommending or doing a fasting mimicking diet, I'd be putting together some sort of whole foods plant-based sort of alternative to that. Anyway, as I said, Jenny said she had accompanied her mother to True North, but on this occasion, well before we went there, Jenny hit some bumps or perhaps some ice on the road.
So yes, I back in July, I had quite a catastrophic shoulder injury requiring a full shoulder replacement, and with the many weeks following of quite severe pain, I'm already quite lean. I lost more weight. So when I headed off to California to the conference, I was thinking, I don't think I'll be able to fast. I'm already right. Almost. I think I was already below the bottom range of what they consider normal BMI. So I was just there I was going to go and accompany Malcolm, and I know it's such a fun place to hang out anyway. But at the conference, talking with our dear friend Dr. Michael Clapper, he'd said to me, your shoulder could really benefit from a short fast. And I said, now you've got my interest. And, he explained a few things. And so at that point, I was about 8 weeks since the injury. And, there'd been so much swelling, inflammation, and so on. So I was in. I thought I'll give it a go, but knowing that it might only be a really short fast. Do you want me to keep going?
Just about the pain.
Well, you want me to talk about during my fast? Okay. I thought you were going to talk about yours first. So we both start on the same day doing water only, and you've actually got to feed into it.
Well, actually, maybe I'll go a bit further and we'll come back to that.
Yeah.
So I was really apprehensive about going there. Like I'd only ever miss breakfast, and also like how hungry would I feel? How fatigued would it be? Like, would it be like, I felt really awful, like the last few kilometers of a marathon for the whole week? Would I be sort of chewing the furniture? And how would I cope with that dreadful reality of rest? Yes, no exercise, sitting round. It's not my natural way of being. Anyway, so we arrived there, and as Jenny started saying, you have to do a feed-in period. What you start fasting with, you have all this stuff that just stays in your guts, and you do not want to have like lumps of KFC sort of decaying in your colon for days on end. So you do this feed-in of fruit and veg, and thank you, Michael Clapper, for saying that day one of feeding in, I probably could have some oats for breakfast, so I did.
And we were at the conference on we were calling our first feed-in day.
And the last meal provided at the conference was lunch. So we squirreled away some lunch boxes of, salads and fruits and raw vegetables to have, that night and the next morning, while we traveled to TrueNorth. So we arrived at TrueNorth and continued our second day of feeding in. By evening meal, it was just like some, raw salad and vegetables and things. First day of fasting at TrueNorth. I sailed through no breakfast, no lunch, no great problems. Already by late afternoon, I was starting to feel a bit weak and lightheaded. The sort of feeling you have when it's like, I think I need some food. I'm feeling a bit weak and tired. And that was really the predominant, that sort of feeling weak and a little bit lightheaded and a bit sort of, that was my predominant symptom really throughout the fasting period. It was quite interesting that I never had that. I was sure I felt hungry at times, but I never had any, overwhelming sort of urge to eat the leaves on the plants in the courtyard or chew the furniture or anything, which was a relief. And I actually felt quite well sitting around, felt fine while I was sitting, working on my computer some days, especially the early days, or socializing in the courtyard. And it was reassuring that many of the other, let's call them inmates there, because we're meant to stay in there. I think day 2 we left the premises and went for a bit of a walk around the block, but otherwise, they'd like you to stay there in case you fall over or something. And many of the inmates there were fasting for 2 weeks, 4 weeks. TrueNorth will fast people up to 40 days. Not that wouldn't be me because I don't have enough body fat to get through 40 days, and I didn't need to do a prolonged fast because I'm in reasonable health. But we're very lucky with the Californian sunshine up at Santa Rosa. Like it was warm to hot, even hot, and blue sky like every day. One day we saw a bit of cloud and it blew away, and then every night it was cool. And we actually had this apartment to ourselves. No one moved into the other rooms in the whole week, and so we just opened it all up and let the cool air come through at night. So that was nice. And to keep you entertained there and educated, there's morning and afternoon presentations, cooking demos. There were a few people away, like Alan Goldhammer had presented at the Plantrition conference we were at, but had some other presentations to give. So he wasn't around. Otherwise, he'd be one of the people who would give one of the morning or afternoon presentations. However, by day 2 of Jenny's fast,
Not fast, refeeding.
Refeeding.
You're jumping ahead, though. I think I need to talk about my fast.
Okay, you need to add that onto your thing.
Okay.
So I did experience a big dip in how I felt on day 3, a fatigue, an almost flu-y sort of malaise, just felt tired, I didn't rest, not well, no aches and pains or fevers or anything, just like, real heavy fatigue you get when you're sick. Um, and so I rested more and moved less. And surprisingly, day 4, I bounced back. Went out to the courtyard at dawn before anyone else and walked round and around like a caged tiger, did all these sort of like balancing, stretching exercises in the courtyard. And then that evening, Jenny and I at 6 p.m. gave a webinar to our immersion alumni back home. I think day 3 could have been ketosis setting in. So just a little bit about the physiology of fasting. Um, when we're several hours after our meal and our bodies that are no longer putting away the fuel, it's burning it, and the body will always burn some fat. You don't need to be in any special state. Your body will always burn some fat at rest. Um, but many of the cells in our body, we've got quite a few cell types that can only run on glucose. They can't burn fat. And so there's all this glycogen stored, which is, glucose sort of like an animal equivalent of starch. Glucose stored in the liver and in the muscles, but that only lasts like 12 to 24 hours. After that, to maintain a blood glucose level, the body has to start making it. Yeah, it breaks down the amino acids. It breaks protein down. Not all of them, so it's a pretty inefficient process that. Um, and remember when I talk about these stages, is the body doesn't go, right, I finished glycogen source, now I'm going to do everything sort of overlaps and sort of is graduated. And so your body's breaking down protein and making some extra glucose. Not sustainable for a human, where over 20% of our resting energy is for the brain, and it's mostly glucose. So in humans, we have this adaptation where our brains can run on mostly ketones, which the body can make from fat. And, because usually we have, quite a few weeks of fat stores in our bodies, sometimes months worth. The brain will always need a small amount of glucose. Some other tissues will always need a small amount of glucose. Just so, the body will always be breaking down some protein to make glucose. But yeah, you go into ketosis, where the body starts making hydroxybutyrate and acetoacetate, things that we call ketone bodies, from just the fat stores that are being released. And ketones are like our emergency fuel. Like, I know there's, the ketosis bros and things. They're not the preferred fuel for our body. They're pretty harsh, actually. Like apart from your breath smelling and things, they put quite a heavy acid load on your body. It put quite a lot of stress on your kidneys. Hence the water. Like they recommend when you're water only fasting that you actually drink lots of water, like about 7 large glasses a day. So I would keep that up. And even at night time, if I wake up a few times in the night, drink a bit more water. I've got to keep water flashing through those kidneys while I'm in all this ketosis and stuff.
Just want to remind you, people really want to hear your experience. I didn't realize you had so many notes.
And of course, if we fast for too long, and exhaust our fat stores, then the body's just breaking down lean tissue. That's starvation. That's not a healthy state at all. And fasting, the body has a response to fasting that has some real benefits, like it's conserve energy, recycle nutrients, do autophagy. So it really down-regulates all the sort of inflammatory, excessive growth sort of processes, autoimmune disease. And normal cells can bunker down while cancer cells can't, so they can struggle to survive. And the TrueNorth have done some publications on a type of cancer called lymphoma. And during fasting, the body recycles nutrients more efficiently. So, you don't get beriberi or scurvy from doing water only for a few weeks. And then there's autophagy, where the body's like breaking down and using for fuel, parts of cells that are, damaged or broken or superfluous to needs. And then at the end of it all, some extra stem cell release as the fast is finished. But back to my story. On day 5, I didn't feel as well. Day 5, I wasn't on my day 4 high anymore, and I had an increase in fatigue and feeling a bit yucky and things. No nausea or headaches or anything. Where were you up to at this stage, Jenny?
By
Day
day
5.
5, well, I mean, just starting with, my 4-day fast that I, because I had fasted in 2017 for 6 days, and I'd pretty much sailed through it. Although the day I'd already decided to stop, the supervising doctor that day had said to me, "Oh, we just got your blood test results, and we would have stopped you anyway, just because some of the biomarkers weren't looking good." But that was my experience in 2017. So I wasn't too concerned, although apart from the fact that I was underweight. So the first 3 days, I was fine. In fact, even when Malcolm was having a bit of a crash on the 3rd day, I felt pretty good. It was nicely relaxing and enjoying the whole place. But day 4, I didn't feel great, and it never let up as the day went on. And so late that afternoon, you get visited in your room first thing in the morning, and then usually around 4 p.m. And the morning team, often they're like interns, they could be nurses, a whole range of people who are working there. And then there's a doctor comes and visits you. But in the afternoon, it's just that sort of that team that come in to, we going to talk about what they do?
Yeah.
Anyway, so on the 4th day, when we had scheduled we were going to do this webinar live for our alumni, because anyone who comes to our 7-day immersion retreat, we keep in touch with a live webinar every couple of months. So we'd scheduled this, and I was feeling pretty lousy. So they decided that I might be a candidate to have some broth, which is sort of having something that's just slightly flavoured with almost no calories. And I must say it tasted pretty foul, but I felt a little bit better going into that night. So day 5, I woke up in the morning and I just thought, no, why am I doing this? So when the morning team came in and the doctor came in, I said, I think I want to start juicing. But sorry, what I didn't mention was what I experienced with my shoulder pain. So during those first 4 days, my shoulder by that sort of 8 to 9 weeks was no longer like giving me, 24/7 pain, but I had to move it. I had to be sort of constantly exercising it and doing, the wall climbs and all sorts of things. And I had to move it to the point which it was going to hurt. So I was often aching. During the fast, that ache completely went away. I was absolutely stunned, and of course, stupidly thought, "Oh, maybe it's gone forever." Because I was fasting and not moving much, I didn't really keep up with my exercises. Another thing I regretted. It would have been a chance to really push the boundaries with where that shoulder would go if I had done so, but I didn't. So I start on the juice on day 5, and it was absolute bliss doing that. And would you believe, during that day, a little bit of the pain came back, and I thought, this is really interesting. And I have heard of this before from people that, and they think of it as being, like someone with rheumatoid arthritis, that there's some foods that they're reacting to. And I thought, someone actually had a good explanation, which I can't even do justice
It
to
was
repeat.
about when you're fasting, you lose a lot of electrolytes, so all the fluid volume, in your tissues and things decreases. The muscles will shrink because haven't got all this glycogen stored, and they're probably offloading again a few electrolytes and sort of shrinking a bit. So I sort of think of it as everything's sort of a little bit shrunken down and all fits a bit better.
So yeah, and that is why the shoulder felt so good. But so when I say a little bit of the pain came back, it was only the pain on movement and on stretching, in different directions. And I can honestly say it was a real turning point in dealing with my shoulder after the fast. So although that little bit of pain came back on refeeding, and it's not to do with what I was having. Like the juice was like, watermelon and celery, and I don't know, it was nothing. But I found that really interesting and thoughtful about anyone else who's been trying to do the diet for, to relieve arthritis pain. Anyway, over to you for your day 5, because I was refeeding by day 5.
And I had a yoga mat in the room, and I'd pull that out at least once a day, at the end of the bed, and and just do a few stretches and things, but nothing really vigorous, especially on the tired days. Anyway, so I breezed through day 4. Day 5, I didn't feel as well. I think I was feeling a little bit worse than that day 3 dip. I had an increase in fatigue. I sort of had more persistent, just unwell sort of feeling a bit weaker. So I told my visiting health team that, I'd probably begin refeeding the next morning, and I'll see how I go. And the health practitioner team, they were really excellent. And it was apparent that they communicated with each other as well, so that your main supervising doctor would know what sort of difficulties you've been having, because you would have different people come around and different doctors and other, in the US, there's lots of different doctors, chiropractor doctors, doctors. And so it was good the way they sort of communicated and knew what was going on and things. But they'd come around and they would ask you questions. You'd record your own weight. You had scales in the room, and you'd get up in the morning and record your weight on the scales for the day. And that was a bit scary. Like, it kept going down and down and down. Since I got back from there, I've really been working hard in the gym, trying to gain a bit more lean body mass, because it sort of occurred to me that, that my lean body mass is sort of lower than probably ideal. I don't want to really get too old in that respect. I'm getting older. I do want to get older.
Want to get old.
I want to be alive and get older, but to maintain a bit more muscle mass. So they'd come around in the morning and they'd ask us, how many glasses of water did you have, in the last 24 hours? And how do you rate your sleep? And what about your bowels? Wow, I didn't go until day 3 of that vegetables I'd eaten before I fasted. And I think I went again on day 6. But everything, once you start refeeding, all fired up just fine. There was no huge constipation issues or anything. And they ask you about your energy levels. Are you getting headaches? Are you getting nauseated? That can be a problem. Is there any dizziness? I just sort of had a little bit of mild lightheadedness. And then they measure your blood pressure, your pulse, your oxygen saturation, the finger meter thing, even your temperature. And as I said, it would all report back, and the team and your supervising doctor would know about this. Anyway, on that day 5, I actually got a call at 7:40 p.m. on the phone in my room from my supervising doctor, Dr. Skuka, who sort of asked how I was going. And I said, look, I was that evening, I was sort of feeling a bit fuzzy in the head. I said, yep, I'm ready to start juices tomorrow morning. And commence the refeeding process. I don't need to, be a hero and, try and go 7 days or anything. So the refeeding, that's a really important thing, because, when you've been fasting, especially for a long period of time, you need to gradually reintroduce food. I believe that, during war times, there have actually been prisoners of war who have been killed by being rescued and suddenly being fed all this really rich food, because you need to sort of get your gut up and working again. You'll be a bit insulin resistant too, I guess, after that prolonged fast. So for every week that you've fasted, you need to do about 1 day of a protocol that starts off on day 1 with the juices. Now, by that first afternoon of refeeding, I thought, I've been tricked. I sort of fasted longer than 5 days, because I did that, only had vegetables and not all that much fruit the day before. And now it's the day after, and I've had a watermelon juice and a celery juice, and it's like, no, I want some more food. Anyway, I was cleared to commence the next stage for the evening meal. I said less than a whole day, because I was doing fine and because I'd fasted for less than 7 days. And phase 2 is raw. So, you can commence some raw fruit. I was happy to eat raw chunks of fruit and raw vegetables and salads, for that evening meal. So you do, about a day, or in my case, you're almost a day on that. and then you introduce the next phase, which means you can introduce some steamed food. You can have steamed vegetables, some carrots and potatoes and things. A light watery soup. And after that, the following day, or for me, just a bit less than a day, was uh, you can start to have grains. At some point, I had a meal which had no raw vegetables at all. There were so many raw vegetables and salads, both at the conference and TrueNorth. And if you know me well, I actually like cooked vegetables. But one day I just went, I'm only eating well cooked things from the buffet on this meal, thanks. But anyway, so where have we got up to? Phase 4, we're introducing grains. We're introducing grains to the diet. We're having some oats for breakfast, yum, and some rice. And then the final phase, phase 5, is when you can introduce legumes and you can introduce nuts, although we don't eat a lot of nuts. And on phase 5, a TrueNorth brochure information sheet says unrestricted vegan SOS free diet to be followed for 50 years. So we've got quite a few years to go before we finish that stage. My outcomes, why was I even there? Part of it was the experience. Like every set of spiritual beliefs, religions, they all seem to have fasting as an important, profound part of their practices and things. So I just wanted to experience water-only fasting. I think another thing I got out of it is I no longer have to fear missing a meal. Or the other morning, I said to Jenny, "Oh, we're going to the gym or something. I'm feeling really hungry." Like we finished eating really early last night because we had something on. And Jenny said, that was like, I'd fasted for 14 hours or something. And Jenny said, you fasted for 5 days. I was like, yeah, okay. Gives me confidence. Right. Health improvements. Did I experience any? Yeah, I think I've experienced some improvements in my gut health, bowel function. One thing is one thing that I have done as part of that is reduce caffeine intake, because you don't have any caffeine or substance use while you're at TrueNorth. So I'd sort of backed my caffeine back, but not stopped it till I actually got there. I mean, why would you stop it until it got there? But I didn't get any headaches from that. So I'm still having reduced amounts of caffeine, and I'm also sleeping better. So I think I've had some health improvements. But for me, it was also medical education. I previously read about fasting, been to conferences with workshops on fasting, but this was, doing it, know how it's actually done in practice. So what about if you want to fast in Australia? Where can you find a fasting centre? If for a longer fast, we'd actually recommend TrueNorth because, there's not a very expensive place to stay at. Once you've got the flight done, you can stay there. And if you're doing a longer fast, maybe you have to do the refeeding for even longer. I mean, for 50% again.
But there is a facility here.
Yeah, we often send people to Doug Evans,
just out of Sydney.
Yeah, he just has several rooms in his home where he supervises people fasting. Apparently, from a friend of ours, looks after them really well and drives them around and things like that. Yeah, the supervision is important because, what happens if you get up and go to the bathroom and fall over and crack your head because you faint, or suddenly start, vomiting, throwing up, and you're already electrolyte depleted anyway. And also having things on hand. So, having someone who can make the juices for you when you sort of need to start refeeding, and because you can't be off shopping and busy spending all this time in the kitchen when you're fasting. But however, I talked to some other doctors there, and the pandemic sort of made everything go, home based and things. And yeah, it's possible in the future that I might actually do some, telehealth supervision of fasting. But I'd have to be selected regular patients who I knew well, and there would have to be conditions, and they'd have to have someone at home with them, and et cetera, to for me to feel that was safe to do, remote fasting of a supervision of fasting.
So, the one other thing I didn't report was Following my surgery, I think the anaesthetist bill showed that I was on the operating table for 2.5 hours. I had incredible brain fog from the what in the weeks and months after my surgery back in late July. And I definitely felt, I mean, I know it's a subjective experience, but I definitely felt like my brain had cleared just in those 4 days. So, I know that 5 days of a water-only fast is generally considered sort of the minimum to get a really good, begin to get a good outcome. But I was pretty happy with what I did, and I don't think it would have helped if I'd pushed it, given that I wasn't feeling great and I was really getting just too light. Every day on the scales, it's like, no, you're measuring it in pounds. And of course, every day it was sort of a pound lighter. Anyway, that was my experience. And it was really worth doing. We'd do it again, wouldn't we? Would we?
Yeah, we'd do it again. I had to stop and think about that. Yeah, no, it was interesting, the little bit of fat loss, because, I had a DEXA scan earlier this year, partly because I was going to TrueNorth and I thought, have I actually got enough body fat? And I thought I was 13% body fat, which is, pretty good for a young bloke. And I don't know, but most other people in my age group have gone way beyond that. But it was enough body fat to actually, be able to fast for a while. But being fairly lean, as the fast went on, I'd look at this little. I normally have, a little bit of soft fat on the outside of my belly, where it's, it's meant to be. And even in the 5 days, I saw that some of the little stores of fat on my rather lean body sort of shrink over those few days.
So has anyone got any questions for us about fasting, about our experience? So I think we've sort of covered how we benefited from the fasting. What else? Anything else that we have missed? Not seeing any questions or comments coming from the YouTube stream.
Interesting. Someone else said they did a 9-day fast and day 3 was bad.
Ruth, who was at the plant nutrition conference.
Yep. Yeah. And why day 3? When I started to talk about the physiology of fasting, day 3 would be about when the ketosis really set in. And I think that's probably a little bit of a bumpy transition where suddenly your brain's having to switch over from glucose to mostly ketones, and you're getting this acid load in the body and things. So, not surprising people sometimes get that little bit of a dip, just a few days into it.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any comments from the YouTube stream.
Someone said our skin looks great. Yes, the lighting. We've got a fancy light there that makes the skin look good.
I hope that people are able to watch via YouTube. I can't tell from here. Normally, I see both in the comment stream, but I'm not. Anyway, anyone else have any questions for us?
Ruth said, "What was your toughest day?" For me, it's actually day 5.
Good. Jackie says she can see it.
And day 3, it's funny how I dipped in day 3, and then day 4 was like, that was one of my better days. But day 5, don't know if I'd been really determined to go longer and felt really a need to. I suppose I would have gone into day 6 and just see how I felt. I mean, might not have felt as bad.
So for me, the toughest day was day 4, and I just thought, given that when I first went to the US, I wasn't even planning to fast, I thought that I'd had too much of a tough time in the preceding months to do so.
Someone's got a good physiology question here. Does the body also burn lean mass when fasting, or does it prioritize fat? Yeah, as I said, the human body's, unlike the other apes, has had to evolve to having, a brain that uses over 20% of our energy at rest and runs on glucose, which is just not compatible. If you're hard to get any food for a week or 2, that means that your body just have to rip apart all your muscle and lean tissue to keep that going. So we can do ketosis. So your body does try and preserve the lean tissue and prioritize burning fat, especially that's the whole thing about being in that ketosis state. However, it will keep breaking down some lean tissue because, as I said, there needs to be some glucose produced in the body. What happens to your lean mass? Well, reading a recent publication by Toshia Meyer and Alan Goldhammer called "Can Fasting Save Your Life?" They've written a book, and it came out a few months ago. I think in there they say that usually when people finish fasting, the muscle mass comes back fairly quickly. The body will always try and preserve muscle. So yeah, if you're worried that you went fasting and that you'd lose all your muscle, no, some of it's just been deflated of electrolytes and glycogen. But however the body's losing weight, there is some loss of lean tissue as well as the fat. But the body is smart and prioritizes the fat because that's what it's there for, as a energy reserve.
So Vanessa's asked a good question. If I'd been able to fast for longer, do you think my shoulder would have improved further? I think I'd say yes. I mean, I was amazed that I got as much improvement as I did in those 4 days. That my whole shoulder and area around it, right? I mean, when I had first had the injury, for 4 weeks afterwards, I was swollen right down to my fingertips for many weeks.
Actually,
So
the
there would have been
fingertips were the only bits that didn't look bruised.
So there was so much inflammation going on in my body in that sort of first month. And given that we hit TrueNorth really only sort of at the 2 months afterwards, I think I would have got, but I had to weigh it up against if I'd pushed through, that I'd lost so much weight already that I just thought it was probably not worth. The only other thing I remember asking, I'd been not plagued, but I'd not so long ago acquired these floaters in my eyes, which were really annoying me. It's like, why have I got this? And I'd asked our supervising doctor right on our first day, when you have a very thorough interview, whether he had heard of anyone who'd had their floaters improved, and he said no. And I didn't notice anything different in those 4 days. But I was the following week sitting at the breakfast table talking with another woman who'd fasted for 17 days, and she was saying what she'd experienced and the improvements. And she said, and my floaters are gone. I thought, wow. But no, I can't ever do a 17-day fast. So I do think the longer you fast, if there are certain things that have gone wrong in the body, the more chance of there being some repair. And but my shoulder's doing really well now, and I'm back swimming, defying the surgeon who thought that I'd never do. What did he call it, overarm or
Freestyle?
Freestyle. Yeah. And I'm doing a slightly modified freestyle, and this is only like now 4 months out from just under 4 months from when I had the surgery. So I'm doing really well, and the physio thinks I'm doing really well. So I think the fast did help, as does my determination to put it through as much as I can to get restore the sort of full range of motion.
Yeah, we first met the surgeon the day after the trauma in the afternoon, as Jenny was about to go into surgery to have it operated on, and he said, "Oh, you won't be able to swim overarm." And Jenny's face dropped, and every visit since he's backtracked off that and told us about some other lady who had the same operation. Who sends him photos of her doing freestyle. So Jenny will get there. Someone else asked a question about, if you've got more body fat, is it easier for fasting? Do they have an easier time?
Yeah, I think they do. Yeah.
I sort of get the impression that might be the case.
Yeah, I think there were people there that we saw at all different stages of their fast, who had a lot of weight to lose, and and even early on, most people. I mean, everyone has often a day that's things aren't going great for them. But yeah, there was, I think, one woman there that it was already 21 days in, and she still felt just fine. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that by day 5, my body was sort of digging, hunting around, looking for that, disposable body fat.
So the question for, are we still slowly refeeding? Well, we came back, we were back in Australia by the 7th of October. So no, we were fully refeeding at TrueNorth. And that was one of the things of, that we didn't. One thing that encouraged me to stop my fast even after only 4 days is that I just wanted to be able to eat the food. And of course, you spend a few days refeeding where you can't eat the full range of food. So yeah, we were fully refed before
No, I
we
think
left
even
there.
a week later when I got home, I was still feeling extra hungry. Yeah, I had a ravenous appetite for like over a week after I got home. But I mean, I hit the exercise road running when I got home, and really started working out every day. Actually, I've 8 workouts a week, and there's how many? That doesn't quite fit
It's
into
only
7
7
days,
days.
but I've been doing it. So I mean, that was part of the reason why I was ravenous. But yeah, I think my body was busy doing a catch up. In the second week afterwards.
So the question that is probably got a bit of a tricky answer is, what would you say is a safe fasting approach for someone with a lot of excess body fat and no other health conditions? I just will preface by saying that one of the things that Dr. Alan Goldhammer is clear about is that fasting isn't to be used just for weight loss. Like, that's not really
TrueNorth is not a weight loss centre.
Because people will put the weight on again. So it's the benefit from a whole range of health conditions. Also, though,
Well, it's sort of a
it
reboot
is.
in the
They
dietary
actually say
habits.
that healthy people really benefit from doing a fast as well. So it's like it is a good thing for everyone to do, but not to be locked into it as weight loss. That's sort of not the focus. It's actually for all the things. I call it cells that have gone wrong in the body. It's for ridding the body of all those bad cells in all parts that you don't want. Is why I think it's worth doing. So in terms of a safe approach, it's to be guided by. I mean, if you're going to, people at home, I think generally they say you can do 3 days at home fairly safely. Anything longer than that, and you'd want to have a few extra things in place to make sure that you are safe, and to be supervised. Now, TrueNorth actually do ever since COVID, will do remote supervision. But I think one of the clear things is that you need someone, because if you've got no energy, you're not even going to be able to make broth or make, and for refeeding, you're not going to be able to go shopping to get everything. So you really do need help if you're going to do something at home. So I'm not sure if that's what your question was about,
I don't think
Lisa.
that water-only fasting is sort of a good just weight loss method. Although, I guess if someone's got medical conditions and goes to TrueNorth and, does a very long fast, it'll certainly lose a lot of weight. Um, I think, a short water-only fast can be a great detox if people are really hooked on the sugar and fat and processed food and meat and dairy.
Resetting the taste
Then
buds.
resets the taste buds. The stories from TrueNorth about people who've gone in there with a straight Western diet and said the food was terrible, and then after the fast they say this food's really good now, and they can actually eat the healthy food. I think number one for weights to sort of work on that calorie density and maybe do the restricted time feeding, like not be eating much in the late in the day and having a longer evening fast. As the Esselstyn, I mean, it's probably for some people who need to have a lot of weight and are sort of not very metabolically active, haven't got a high level of fitness and activity. Perhaps doing some fasting mimicking days where you sort of still eat some greens and berries and healthy foods, but significantly less calories. That may be a helpful approach. Some people certainly find that a good addition to just sort of watching the calorie density every day.
I'll come to Vanessa's question in a moment. Ruth, yes, I'm with you there. I didn't so much notice it this time round, but cauliflower tasted so good back in 2017. In fact, what it did, the taste of cauliflower was so good after my 6-day fast that I sort of came back home and forever have retained that memory, such that I absolutely love cauliflower. Didn't do the same thing for me because I still love cauliflower. Even just eating cauliflower with nothing on it, which I think prior to 2017, I probably always wanted something with it, some sort of sauce. So yes, it was. I don't know if I really noticed anything. I mean, I love the first juice. Malcolm took a photo of me, and I had the biggest grin on my face after having a swig of this juice that was watermelon coloured, but it had a few other vegetables in it. It was just delicious. So I didn't notice it quite as much as I did the first time, where the simple. I also can remember the saltiness of silver beet was just amazing. So yeah, the taste bud reset is pretty good. And I guess actually that question earlier about are we slowly refeeding, one thing it does for you is, and I probably had that for many weeks, I didn't really crave things that were terribly rich or full of flavour. Like I was quite happy with foods that were really simple. And that, you slowly lose that and start to want to make things a bit more exciting. So Vanessa's question about the interesting stories of health improvements, and this is just something that's incredible about the place. And I'd certainly, I kept a blog in 2017, and I'd sort of talked about some of the amazing stories. It's like nearly everyone there has an amazing story of things that they have lost in terms of poor health. And I'm trying to think with this time round, was there anything that we learned that was a bit surprising? I mean, the fact that eye floaters could improve was encouraging to think that. I mean, I guess for some people the floaters do disappear, but I'm actually a little bit concerned that it was the floaters that had made their presence felt not long before I went skiing and had the accident with my shoulder. That I think that experience of going into a white room and having vision a little bit impaired might have contributed to it. Anyway, so it's nice to think that if I know with I think it's at Goldhammer that has always said this: if food got you into something, food will get you out. And so I'm making just the connection that if a fast can improve something like eye floaters, over time eating a whole food plant-based diet, salt, oil, sugar-free, has to make an improvement. I'm optimistic. I'm sure many people live with floaters all the time, but they were new to me and I wasn't happy with them. Anything that you remember of the experiences of others when we were there that we were surprised at? Because, I mean, we know that people experience.
I mean, when you went there quite a few years ago with Gladys, your mother,
she lost her asthma, her lifelong asthma. She lost and never came back. She had like a breathing function, her lung function improved, and she noticed that clearly on about the 6th or 7th day of a water fast, which she did, I think, for 11 or 12 days. And she wasn't expecting that at all. And what else? There's so many things.
I mean, high blood pressure is a classic. They've have lots of cases of people who come in with really high blood pressure and end up with blood pressure that no longer requires any medications, or people with insulin resistance or early type 2 diabetes, which goes away. Probably even type 2 diabetes that's been there for a long time that goes into remission. And things like rheumatoid arthritis.
The TrueNorth do collect a lot of data, and so when you go there, you sign away to say, "Yep, I'm happy to be used for research." Very happy with that. And so, yeah, they've had more than 20,000 people go through in I'm not sure how many years that's been. And so they have so much data, and they're busily trying to publish as much as they can. Sometimes it's a case study, a single case. Other times it's a whole group of patients with a certain condition, and they've reported on that. And we just look forward to more of that coming out from TrueNorth. I know they've had experience with long COVID, and it makes absolute sense to us because we've already had the experience of people coming to our immersion in the last couple of years who have had been suffering from long COVID symptoms.
And they don't all get completely better, but they usually get
yeah,
you expect them to have significant improvements. And long COVID sort of a lot of it's about damage to the to the small arteries and things, persistent immune system activation and inflammation, all things that whole foods, plant-based, and probably fasting too can have a powerful effect on.
Fasting just does like a kickstart of or a speed up of any of the things that whole food plant-based can
TrueNorth
do.
have had one case of lymphoma, type of blood cancer. We get all these cancerous lumps within your body. It's an immune cell cancer. They had a case of lymphoma that went into remission, and then they published again on the same case about 5 years later because it didn't come back again. And I think currently they're looking at to publish something on a series of people with lymphoma who are going to do or have done fasting at TrueNorth.
But if you're interested, you can visit their website. It's actually, you can Google TrueNorth Health Center, Center spelled CENTER. But their website's, I'll put it in the
their website
is
it's
healthpromoting.com.
.org?
No, healthpromoting.com, I think it is.
.com, okay.
I'll put it in the comments of both the YouTube and the Facebook. And they've published a lot of data, and you can explore that through their website,
including being bold enough to publish that series of adverse effects, because a lot of other practitioners, even practitioners in the whole foods plant-based world, and you hear about all their successes and their successful individual cases, but you don't always hear about they're
not so success stories.
Not so success stories. And so I thought it was very good that TrueNorth actually published 20,000 people, and probably hundreds or even thousands of adverse reactions, right down to sort of minor things, right up to, well, not up to deaths or no deaths.
So a comment, Netflix needs to do a doco. Well, the film What the Health, they actually went to TrueNorth and interviewed, I think it was 3 people there, and interviewed them early on in their stay, and then, some weeks later. And yeah, so they were great testimonials. I still remember that woman, I think her name was Amy, in the film What the Health, that, that was just about in tears when she said it was just, I had no idea it was just 2 weeks. It took 2 weeks to be, to go from being so unwell, she could barely function in life on so many medications, and 2 weeks of fasting, and then moving on to whole food plant-based. She just felt fantastic. So, yes, it's an amazing place. Probably said enough about it, have we?
Probably.
Gone for an hour. We usually try and make our live streams only half an hour, but we had a bit to say tonight, and happy to share it and answer any questions that people have. And yeah, so thanks
for attending, and thank you for everyone who is interacting, as well as everyone who is just quietly watching.
And for those who are watching this much later, feel free to post a comment, and if we actually see an alert for it, we'll reply. Sometimes Facebook doesn't always alert you to things on your page. Anyway, we say good night, everyone, and see you
next time.
We'll try and do another live stream before it gets to Christmas. We'll think of a topic. So, yeah, okay.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.